Had I grown up in a different environment, I think it's likely I would be a male to female transsexual. It's something I did research into as a teen, and had I received more messages that my feminine gender expression was wrong for the body I was born into, I may have felt the need to change that body. The thing that helped me most in feeling comfortable in my own skin, and in exploring my identity, was seeing people whose gender expressions were a little off the beaten path. A couple big influences are the work of Kate Bornstein, author of Gender Outlaw, and Monika Treut's documentary Gendernauts. Although I don't want to change my body surgically, I do sometimes enjoy the act of transformation through drag. I have performed as a drag queen for several years. Although my day-to-day outfits can be somewhat outlandish, when I dress in drag, I generally wear much more makeup and often pad my body to change my proportions. I see drag as an exaggeration and performance of gender, often poking fun at its conventions. Being a drag queen is generally seen as the territory of gay men, which is another reason why someone might assume that that is what I am. The interesting thing about being in the drag community and having a female partner is sometimes I have to reverse out myself. Drag queens in San Francisco are a very diverse group that includes a lot of biological women and bearded men, which is a San Francisco tradition dating back to the Cockettes of the 1970s. A documentary about the Cockettes was another big influence on helping me to understand that I could express my gender any way I wanted to. The drag world is also a context in which I am referred to as she. I have no problem with male pronouns, but it's nice to have some variety. Photographer Chloe Aftel has been photographing people who identify as agender, and often go by the pronoun they. I'm excited about this identity gaining visibility, but it is not my identity. As far as pronouns go, I think having gender-neutral options is important. Personally, I will happily accept all pronouns used with respect, which I guess makes me more pangender than agender. The concept of agender feels very neutral to me, and while I often inhabit a neutral space, to me the joy of gender is its fluidity. As RuPaul says, "You're born naked, and the rest is drag." Sometimes when I get dressed in the morning, I combine clothes that borrow from men's styles and women's styles for a more androgynous look, while other times I might dress in a more specifically gendered way. Although even when I'm at my most masculine, sometimes I'm still taken for a woman due to signifiers like long hair or earrings. It is this fluidity that makes me wary of defining or labeling my identity at all. I don't want an identity that is dependent on the way that I dress, act, speak, dance, or play, because while it will always be authentic, it might not be the same every day. The language of identity is constantly being reinvented. New words come into fashion, and often old ones are ostracized, sometimes at the expense of how people identify themselves. People become very sensitive about words that others use to identify them as, and very protective of words that they identify themselves as. There are a lot of words that if I used for myself, someone might feel I was appropriating their identity. The word I identify with most in LGBTQIA, etc., the word that I feel most included by, is queer. If your gender, sex, or sexuality makes you feel different, chances are you fit under the umbrella that is the word queer. My favorite labels are the ones that are the most open. Like gender fluid, gender bender, gender variant, gender fuck, gender queer, or how about just gender other, gender nebulous. All of these words are non-binary, and while agender and pangender could be seen as a binary, I don't think that a scale of all or nothing leaves anyone out. While not everyone has caught up, many of us already live in a post-binary world. Post-binary is the idea that we have moved beyond the system we use to measure gender as well as sex, as a choice between man or woman. An example of something holding us in the binary is how we are marketed and sold to, which starts when we are born with color-coded toys and clothing. Facebook adding so many options for gender is an example of us moving in the direction of post-binary. In the same way that our races are mixing and the world is becoming a melting pot, or how music today is constantly creating new genres and hybrids, identities are blossoming and outgrowing old labels. Having only two options is obsolete. I do realize that I am incredibly privileged. I can pass as male, I can pass as white, and depending on how I dress, I can pass as straight. I've never been physically assaulted or made to feel unsafe. I get my fair share of stares, and I have had faggot and freak yelled at me from passing pickup trucks. But I feel comfortable walking down the street, expressing myself however I choose, and I feel accepted by my community. That is a huge luxury that millions of people around the world don't have. There are many people who are invisible and fighting for acceptance, recognition, and labels can be helpful. And while I am comfortable with my identity remaining undefined, plenty of people accept me for how they choose, subconsciously, to define me. My experience and my expression are my own, and when I speak, I'm not speaking for a specific group. It's important when we interact with people to interact with them as individuals. It can be nice to ask someone how they identify and what pronouns they prefer, but only when it's done respectfully, and it should never be the first thing that you ask. It would be lovely if we all made an effort to understand people who may not be like us. It can be hard for sexual people to imagine being asexual, and homosexuality makes a lot of heterosexual people very uncomfortable. We all need to understand that what we experience is not what everyone else experiences. I might not feel like I fit a lot of the more conventional labels, but plenty of people do. Regardless of how any of us identify or are identified, we have something in common. I am human. And as all too many humans forget, I am animal. Actually, there's somewhere I don't mind getting more specific. I am a glitter wolf. What are you? New content ranging from written fiction to videos like this is released on glitterouswolfus.com every Wednesday. You can also join the conversation on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you so much for watching.